Imagine this, a quiet room, a drifting mind, and you traveller of the silent cosmos arriving here as if the universe itself guided your steps. Somewhere between Mars and the Sun, a silent object moves, unhurried, unreadable. A fragment of another star, a question wrapped in cold light. What are the odds that a 1 in 20,000 orbit would brush past 3 worlds and carry a secret no instrument can decode? Some say a whisper hides in the background radiation. Others speak of a signal repeating at 1420 MHz the frequency of hydrogen itself, the breath of creation. But tonight, observer, the mystery is yours to hold. Stay a while, traveller. Imagine a quiet room, traveller. Not a laboratory, not a command centre, just a space where human attention slows enough to listen. The remote viewers who once worked in silence were not mystics chasing visions. They were observers training their minds the way astronomers tune telescopes gently, deliberately, with respect for whatever might appear in the dark. They were given only coordinates, no explanations, no warnings, just a point floating in space-time like a lone star. One such coordinate whispered of Mars 1 million years ago, a world quieter than any memory Earth has ever carried. Joe McMonigal followed the signal inward, not for answers but for observation. What he perceived felt less like revelation and more like a meditation, angular shapes rising from an ancient plane, shadows that looked like structures, silhouettes that seemed like beings shaped by a thinning atmosphere. Nothing about it demanded belief. It simply invited wonder. And in the silent cosmos, wonder is enough. Years later, some of his descriptions resembled real formations photographed by orbiters. Straight ridges, sharp lines, places where geology looked almost intentional. But resemblance is only a whisper, not a conclusion. Mars, after all, is a world that remembers rivers, fog, and seasons. Its silence is deep enough to shape illusions of meaning. Other viewers described geometric forms on the far side of the moon. Domes, towers, patterns. The moon's hidden face has always been a quiet page in our cosmic diary, turned away from us by tidal lock, as if keeping one small secret for itself. Even real photographs contain shadows that tempt imagination, but temptation is not truth. It is simply the way human minds navigate uncertainty, and uncertainty is not an enemy here, it is a teacher. Even the old claims of underground structures on Earth beneath mountains woven into continents soften when viewed through geology rather than fear. The Earth is full of caverns and vaulted stone cathedrals carved by pressure water and volcanic breath. Nature has always been the universe's first architect. Remote viewers perceived patterns, but patterns emerge where human attention lingers. This is one of the quiet truths of observation we reflect as much as we detect. Yet there remains something tender in the thought that human consciousness might stretch further than we assume, not supernaturally, not dramatically. Just as a natural field, subtle, fragile, responding to distances the body cannot cross. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Perhaps that is the quiet heart of these early explorations. Not hidden histories, not secret civilizations, but something human, our instinct to lean toward the unknown, not with fear, but with curiosity. Our ability to sit with the strange and let it stay strange. Our acceptance that meaning does not need to be proven to be felt. You are not lost in space, traveller. You are part of it. And in this stillness, this gentle space between data and dream, it becomes easier to breathe. Easier to remember that the universe owes us nothing, not certainty, not clarity. Only the invitation to look up, to listen, to wonder. Tonight the universe whispers again. It's all right to not understand. There is a moment, traveller, when every investigation slows down. Not because the mystery ends, but because the mind understands that rushing will only blur the view. Remote viewers of earlier decades discovered this truth often. Their work was not about reaching answers, but about resting long enough within uncertainty that new layers of perception could quietly rise. When later sessions drifted toward the moon, observers described slender structures on the far side. Not monuments, not towers, just shapes that seemed more geometric than the usual lunar ridges. The moon has always been a patient keeper of shadows, sculpted by light that arrives without air to soften it. Shadows can look like architecture when the imagination inhales too deeply. Yet even knowing this, the images left a lingering question. Why does the far side feel so different, so unyielding, so ancient in its silence? Some remote viewers sensed movement there not as beings but as intention patterns that felt deliberate in ways nature can occasionally mimic. Astronomers know that the moon's crust contains peculiar mass concentrations buried beneath mare surfaces. These mascons distort gravity in faint, puzzling ways like fingerprints pressed into stone before the stone cooled. Whether these anomalies are geological or remnants of something older is unknown. But the moon holds its stillness without explanation, as if reminding us that silence is the language of distant worlds. The Earth too holds its own quiet cavities. Deep beneath mountain ranges, vast chambers carved by water heat and time remain untouched by human eyes. Remote viewers often describe these spaces as if they were sensing echoes of movement rather than movement itself. Geology carries. Memory rock can hold the shape of ancient flows, ancient pressures, ancient directions. Sometimes what feels like presence is only the Earth remembering its own past. Mountains such as Hayes Perdido and Namni rise like instruments tuned by tectonic patience. Their hidden interiors are shaped by forces so slow that human history seems like a brief whisper by comparison. Those who sensed patterns underground may simply have felt the subtle hum of tectonic plates or the electromagnetic fluctuations that ripple along faults. In quiet spaces, even natural phenomena can feel intentional, and perhaps that is the gentle truth. Intention is often in the observer more than the observed. As reports continued, some viewers spoke of corridors beneath continents, chambers beneath Australia, tunnels shaped like thought rather than stone. But these too soften when seen through geology's lens. Lava tubes collapsed, magma conduits, mineral veins that align in uncanny lines. The Earth is full of straight paths carved by forces that do not think, but behave as though they could. To notice them is not to uncover secrets, but to participate in the contemplative act of geological time. Still, part of the wonder lies in the possibility that human consciousness might stretch beyond its usual borders, not as technology, not as prophecy, but as an extension of perception, a quiet resonance with environments we cannot physically touch. If the brain is an antenna for awareness, then perhaps these impressions are simply the mind brushing against the edges of distant landscapes. Some scientists once proposed that consciousness might function like a field feint, and subtle, capable of interacting with physical reality in ways not yet mapped. Whether true or metaphor, it offers a comforting perspective that awareness could be part of the same fabric as gravity magnetism or the cosmic microwave background. Something gentle, pervasive, unhurried. Something that connects rather than divides. When remote viewers turned their attention to Mars again and again, they often described ancient structures, long-collapsed cities, shelters against thinning air. But Mars is a world shaped by wind erosion, volcanic scars, and the slow retreat of liquid water. Rectilinear features can appear where basalt fractures cleanly, or where ancient riverbeds carve unnatural-looking angles. To imagine a past civilization is not incorrect, it is simply human. Humans see patterns because patterns are how we survive, how we remember, how we find meaning in the vastness. The more images we take of Mars, the more the planet reveals its vulnerable beauty. Dry deltas curled like old hands, canyon walls layered like the pages of cosmic history, ice caps that grow and recede with quiet discipline. Whether or not any intelligence ever lived there, Mars still whispers to us in its own way. Landscapes can hold stories that are true even if they never happened. The Moon, Mars, Earth. 3 worlds bound by gravity drifting in the same gentle orbit around the Sun. They create a kind of cosmic neighbourhood, a triad of silence, each with its own archives of stone and dust. If remote viewers sensed echoes across these worlds, perhaps it is because the mind responds to the familiarity of planetary rhythm. The solar system is after all a family of worlds long accustomed to listening to one another. Even consciousness wormholes, as some describe them, take on a new calm meaning when viewed metaphorically. Perhaps they are not tunnels through space, but moments when awareness slips into a deeper stillness, where intuition moves ahead of comprehension. The human mind often leaps before it walks. It dreams toward possibilities long before they solidify into understanding. This is not evidence of other entities. it is evidence of the imagination stretching its orbit. Consider, traveller, how often human perception misreads its own internal signals. Thoughts drift like comets, emotions flare like meteors, memory curves around experience the way gravity bends light. In such a turbulent inner sky, it is natural that impressions sometimes feel external when they rise from within. This is not a failure of perception, it is a celebration of all the ways the mind learns to explore. Some ancient cave paintings resemble shapes described in remote viewing sketches, antenna-like forms, tall silhouettes, geometric patterns. But ancient art often blends dream ritual cosmology and everyday life. The figures painted on stone walls are not messages, they are meditations left by ancestors who also watched the sky and wondered what moved beyond sight. Perhaps the greatest connection across time is not contact between species, but continuity of curiosity. Humans have always leaned toward the unknown. We have always looked upward with a mix of humility and hope. We have always tried to draw meaning from places where light fades into silence. What matters in the end is not whether consciousness reaches Mars or the Moon. What matters is that the act of reaching teaches us stillness, patience, and wonder. It teaches us to make peace with the invisible. It teaches us to rest inside the unanswered. Somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moves solar wind, drifting dust, frozen light. And somewhere within you, a matching movement begins a quiet acceptance of mystery. Tonight, the stars will keep their silence. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos remembers. There is a strange comfort in knowing that the mind does not always move in straight lines. Even in laboratories where precision is worshipped, researchers admit that thought behaves more like a drifting comet than a neatly charted orbit. Remote viewers of past decades encountered this truth again and again. The mind reaches outward not with certainty but with possibility. And possibility is its own kind of astronomy. When they observed distant places, Mars, the Moon, deep caverns beneath mountains, they were not travelling but listening. Listening to subtle signals of intuition, to quiet impressions, to echoes in the dark that might be their own thoughts returning in new shapes. To modern scientists, this may appear like imagination, but imagination is not the opposite of science. It is often the beginning of it. Some described glimpses of structures on the Moon's far side, patterns, too crisp lines, too geometric. Yet every astronomer knows how lunar light behaves sharp, unfiltered carving shadows so precisely that a small ridge can appear like a tower. The Moon does not soften its edges. It offers shape without apology. And the human mind, ever hopeful for meaning, fills the silence with old memories of architecture and intention. Others spoke of Mars with an almost mournful tenderness. They described long hallways carved into the rock shapes that resembled abandoned chambers, forms that looked like shelters against a changing atmosphere. But Mars is a storyteller in its own right. It bears scars from ancient rivers and forgotten lakes. It is a canvas where wind, sand, and ice have been sculptors for millions of years. To see purpose in these patterns is not to be wrong, it is simply to be human. Beneath the Earth, remote viewers sensed networks of rooms, tunnels, quiet arcs of space beneath mountains. These impressions often mirrored what geology already knows. The Earth is full of hidden architecture built by pressure, heat, and time. Lava tubes snake under volcanic plains. Quartz seams reflect light in geometric faces. Chambers form where water chisels caverns grain by grain. What the mind interprets as presence may simply be the patient construction of nature. Even so, there is something gentle in entertaining the thought that consciousness can seep into places the body cannot follow. Some neuroscientists compare awareness to a field like magnetism or gravity, subtle, pervasive, extending, slightly beyond the skull before fading into the great quiet. If that is true, then perhaps remote viewing is not an anomaly, but an exaggeration of something we all do, letting attention drift past the edges of the known. In this sense, wormholes of consciousness become metaphors rather than physics, moments when awareness skips ahead of the logic, glimpsing fragments of understanding before the rational mind can translate them. It is a reminder that humans often know before they know how they know. And there is peace in accepting this ambiguity. Ancient cave paintings sometimes resemble the tall, slender forms drawn in modern sessions. Yet anthropology teaches us that early humans painted dreams, cosmology, ritual, and memory all at once. They were not documenting encounters, they were expressing awe. Perhaps those figures were depictions of spirit myth, or the feeling of being watched by the cosmos itself, a sensation familiar even today when we look at the night sky too long. The mind is a projector as much as a receiver. Its internal constellations, emotion, memory, imagination, cast light onto whatever it tries to observe. Sometimes we're seeing the universe. Sometimes we are seeing ourselves reflected in it. Both visions are valuable. Both belong to the same cosmic mirror. When remote viewers described movement on the moon or presence beneath the Earth, their impressions often echoed natural phenomena we already understand. Electromagnetic shifts, tectonic microvibrations, atmospheric pressure gradients, subtle signals that the brain interprets in poetic ways when the senses grow quiet. To sense these patterns is not supernatural. It is sensitivity. Science itself often begins with feelings that cannot yet be measured. Gravity was first intuition before it became equation. Electricity was a mystery before it became method. Perhaps consciousness holds its own set of laws still unmeasured, still waiting. Mars remains a world of riddles carved into rust. Its dunes migrate like slow waves. Its slopes crack and darken with seasonal flows of briny dust. The planet breathes in its own silent rhythm, losing atmosphere grain by grain, as though sighing through geologic ages. If viewers sensed sadness there, it may be because the mind recognizes loss wherever it finds it. The moon's far side, with its heavy craters and lingering shadows, feels older than the near side we see each night. Spacecraft readings confirm thicker crust, deeper basins, denser mascons. It is a hemisphere shaped by impacts and silence. If viewers sensed intention, it might simply be the weight of time imprinted in stone, and the Earth, our own restless planet, vibrates constantly with life and tectonics. The Schumann resonance hums faintly at 783 Hz, a planetary heartbeat. Deep caves collect sounds the surface never hears. Magnetic currents travel beneath mountains like slow rivers. To sit quietly long enough is to feel that hum. Perhaps remote viewers were simply listening more deeply than most. None of this diminishes the mystery. Instead, it expands it, because the greater wonder is not in the possibility of hidden civilizations or ancient architects, but in the delicate ways the human mind reaches beyond itself. It searches for meaning in landscapes of dust and shadow. It projects tenderness onto distant worlds. It senses patterns amid the cosmic background noise. This is not delusion, this is longing, and longing is one of the most honest forces in the universe. What if the impressions gathered in these sessions were not glimpses of literal structures, but reflections of our own desire to belong to something larger? What if every perceived tower or tunnel was simply a metaphor, the mind used to translate unfamiliar sensations into familiar shapes? In that interpretation, remote viewing becomes less about uncovering secrets and more about listening to planets, to memory, to the quiet machinery of perception. It becomes a meditation, a soft inquiry into the relationship between the observer and the observed, a recognition that awareness is not separate from the cosmos but threaded through it like a faint persistent line of gravity. Somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moves dust around the sun ions along magnetic fields, particles drifting from stars older than imagination. And somewhere within you a parallel movement begins acceptance. Tonight the universe whispers again, it's all right to not understand. Sleep, traveller. The cosmos keeps watch. There is a moment, traveller, when the boundary between the outer universe and the inner one grows thin like starlight diffused through a drifting veil of dust. In that moment, the mind becomes both telescope and landscape, observing and shaping what it sees with equal gentleness. The old remote viewing sessions, often framed as if they were extraordinary encounters, can be reimagined more simply as explorations of how human consciousness responds to the vastness that surrounds it, not in fear or urgency, but in quiet curiosity. The same curiosity that once guided astronomers to chart the motions of comets, or philosophers to trace the contours of thought. When those early observers described impressions of distant worlds, their accounts were often fragmented, slender silhouettes, geometric patterns, tunnels beneath mountains, lights where none should be. Yet these impressions can also be understood as reflections of the deep human instinct to organize uncertainty into something coherent. The mind resists blankness. It fills the void with forms shaped by memory, intuition, and longing. It projects quiet geometry onto the shadows of the unknown, not to impose meaning but to soothe itself in the presence of mystery. Consider the moon, that ancient companion circling Earth in tidal lock. Its far side, unseen by humanity until the age of spacecraft, contains craters so densely packed they resemble frozen oceans of impacts. The crust there is thicker, the basins deeper, the mascons heavier. When remote viewers described structures, towers, or strange presences, perhaps they were responding to the moon's stark contrast, a face that has never turned toward us, a hemisphere shaped by violence and silence. Such a landscape invites contemplation. It invites the mind to trace intention where the universe has left only the slow handwriting of geological time. Mars tells a similar story. With its dry deltas curled like ancient hands and canyon walls layered like pages of an old cosmic diary, the red planet provokes the imagination with ease. Even spacecraft images sometimes resemble ruins or corridors illusions sculpted by sunlight shadow and the human desire to connect. If viewers sense memories of structures or life, perhaps they were tuning into the echo of what Mars once was, a world with water atmosphere, and seasons, a world that may have carried the potential for life, even if none emerged. To perceive longing there is not strange, it is human. We grieve not only for what we lose, but for what the universe could have been. Beneath Earth's own mountains, where remote viewers once described networks of rooms and delicate machinery, humming in the dark, geology offers its own interpretations. Volcanoes create lava tubes large enough to hide cathedrals. Water carves chambers that stretch for miles beneath limestone. Pressure folds rock into shapes that resemble arches, corridors, domes. These features feel intentional not because they are, but because they embody natural symmetry, the quiet order that emerges when forces operate slowly over eons. To feel presence in these places is to acknowledge the Earth's long history, a history that predates us by billions of rotations of the Sun. There is an old idea in neuroscience that consciousness may operate like a resonant field, extending slightly beyond the brain, as ripples extend beyond a pebble dropped into water. If this metaphor holds even a grain of truth, then impressions of distant places might be less extraordinary than they seem. The mind may simply be sensitive to patterns, electromagnetic fluctuations, geological signatures, planetary rhythms that it interprets through the familiar language of imagery. Not supernatural, but natural in ways we do not yet fully understand. This perspective softens the mystery without erasing it, allowing wonder to coexist peacefully with uncertainty. Ancient cave paintings further illustrate the continuity of human imagination. The tall antenna-like figures found on rock walls around the world may look eerily similar to modern remote viewing sketches, but they need not represent literal entities. Early humans painted spirits' ancestors the shapes of dreams and the outline of their awe. They painted what they felt as much as what they saw. These figures are not evidence of contact, they are evidence of contemplation. The same impulse that guided Paleolithic artists continues in us today, the urge to translate the vast intangible mystery of existence into lines, symbols, and forms. As modern observers listening from the edge of sleep, we can approach all these impressions, lunar shapes, Martian corridors, underground chambers, not as warnings, but as meditations. Each one reflects a different facet of the same truth. Human perception is both instrument and storyteller. It reaches outward and inward at the same time. When it encounters something it cannot fully comprehend, it creates metaphors to bridge the gap. This is not confusion. It is grace. It is the mind's way of honouring the unexplainable without forcing it into certainty. Even the concept of entities, often described in old notes as tall, slender, or luminous, can be reframed as psychological archetypes. The mind gives form to forces it senses but cannot articulate. In sleep, we see such figures often. They appear as guardians, shadows, symbols of transition. To encounter them in deep meditation or remote viewing may simply be an extension of this natural phenomenon. A moment when the inner cosmos borrows imagery from our shared human vocabulary of mystery. In that sense, the most profound revelation is not the possibility of beings beyond Earth, but the recognition that human awareness is capable of extraordinary subtlety. It can sense rhythms in the environment that escape ordinary attention. It can create meaning where none is given. It can rest inside contradictions without collapsing into fear. It can transform unknown landscapes into gentle reflections of wonder. Tonight, traveller, let this be enough. You belong to a species that listens, even when the universe offers only silence, even when the data dissolves into ambiguity, even when the stars keep their distance. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed, and it's all right to not understand. Sleep now. The cosmos will keep watch. There is a certain comfort, traveller, in accepting that perception is not a straight beam of light, but something softer, more like mist, curling through a canyon at dusk, shaping itself around whatever terrain it meets. When early remote viewers recorded impressions that seemed to stretch beyond the familiar limits of space and time, their notes were often treated as anomalies. Yet, if we look at them through the quiet lens of the silent cosmos, they become something gentler meditations, not declarations of truth, but reflections of how the human mind behaves when invited into silence deep enough to hear its own faint echoes. The idea of seeing distant places without leaving the room is less about distance than about attention. When the world slows and the ambient noise inside the mind settles into still water, perception becomes more porous. Thoughts drift more freely, intuition rises like a pale tide. In such a state, impressions of Mars or the Moon may not be visions of physical landscapes, but interpretations of subtle internal signals, electrical rhythms, emotional resonances, memories shaped by thousands of years of human stargazing. Each impression becomes a small poem written by the nervous system in response to cosmic quiet. Scientists sometimes describe consciousness as a system that constantly generates predictions about reality. The mind anticipates patterns, fills gaps, smooths rough edges. When placed before unknowns, coordinates without explanation, shadows on lunar terrain, the unfamiliar hum of electromagnetic fields, it responds instinctively by shaping possibilities into imagery. A corridor beneath a mountain, a figure outlined in light, a tower rising from the moon's far side. Each one may be less a discovery and more a mirror held up to the architecture of the observer's inner sky. Think of how the brain interprets sensory ambiguity. A faint sound becomes footsteps. A drifting light becomes a star. A rock formation glimpsed at the edge of vision becomes a doorway. This pattern-making instinct, so essential for survival, also guides our experience of cosmic mystery. When remote viewers described entities or structures, they might have been responding to the same neural impulse that makes children find faces in clouds, or astronomers see galaxies in grains of noisy data. It is not a flaw, it is a feature of awareness, a reminder that meaning is woven into us even when it is absent from the world. The moon remains a lesson in this quiet ambiguity. Its far side is rugged, ancient, untouched by the smoothing effects of volcanic seas. Shadows stretch in ways unfamiliar to earthbound perception. Sunlight hits crater rims at the angles that create illusions of height and depth. Even trained astronauts have mistaken shadows for structures. In that sense, remote viewers were participating in a very human tradition, interpreting the lunar surface as both place and metaphor. The moon has always been both, a distant world and a projection screen for the imagination. Mars too invites projection. Its canyons run deeper than Earth's, its storms sweep wider, its silence feels older. When someone senses a memory there, a hall, a shelter, a figure, they are often sensing the ache of a world that once lived differently. Science tells us Mars had water rivers and atmosphere thick enough to hold warmth for entire seasons. To imagine life there is not an unreasonable leap. It is a reflection of the shared human desire to find company in the vastness, to feel that intelligence might not be confined to a single blue planet, drifting around an ordinary star. On Earth, beneath mountain ranges, geology carves its own architecture. Caves can resemble cathedrals, lava tubes can mimic tunnels, quartz veins shine like hidden circuitry. In such landscapes, the mind naturally interprets intention, where there is only pressure time and the slow choreography of minerals. Remote viewers who sensed activity underground may have simply been attuned to the energy of tectonic movement, the subtle pulse of the planet's living interior. Earth is not still, it breathes in rock the way we breathe in air. The concept of consciousness, wormholes often misunderstood, can be reimagined in a quieter way. Not as literal tunnels through space-time, but as metaphorical passages where awareness transitions from one state to another. These moments occur in meditation, in dreams, in moments of deep reflection. Time stretches, distance fades, thought moves in loops rather than lines. The mind migrates gently beyond its usual boundaries. Calling these sensations wormholes is poetic rather than scientific. Yet poetry often reveals truths that equations cannot. The idea of entities, too, softens when we view it with compassion rather than fear. Shadows of imagination can take humanoid shape because the human form is our primary language of understanding. A tall figure might represent curiosity. A glowing form might represent uncertainty. A silhouette might represent the mind's attempt to translate unfamiliar internal data into familiar outlines. These figures are not invaders. They are archetypes, symbols inside the mind's ancient library. Ancient cave art supports this view. The elongated shapes, the strange limbs, the tall forms, they represent ritual myth transformation. They were painted by people who lived close to the land and close to the night sky. People who understood that not everything seen in stillness is meant to be literal. The paintings are meditations, not memories. They remind us that humans have always turned mystery into imagery. In the silent cosmos, the interpretation is not what did they see, but what did their awareness become when faced with the unknown. This reframing removes fear and allows us to appreciate something deeper, the human capacity to explore without understanding, to sit in the presence of uncertainty and let it simply be, to allow impressions to drift across the mind like meteors across a night sky, brief and beautiful without demanding that they leave behind anything more than wonder. You're not lost in space, you are part of it. Every question the universe offers is an invitation, not a warning. Every ambiguity is a soft place to rest rather than a puzzle to solve. Every impression, whether geological, psychological, or poetic, enriches the quiet landscape of the inner cosmos. Tonight, let uncertainty feel gentle. Let it breathe. Let it loosen its grip on the need for clarity. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed, only held, only welcomed. Sleep now, traveller, the cosmos keeps watch. There is a kind of horizon inside the mind traveller, a boundary, where thought dissolves into something wider, softer and older than language. Remote viewers of earlier decades often drifted toward this inner horizon without intending to. Their notes read like attempts to translate a sensation rather than a sight. They were not charting alien landscapes, they were charting the terrain of awareness itself. As their attention deepened, some spoke of energies or presences, though these words rarely captured what they felt. In scientific terms, they may have been noticing subtle internal shifts, changes in heartbeat temperature, or the quiet hum of neural synchrony. The brain, when deeply focused, becomes sensitive to its own rhythms. It interprets these rhythms through metaphor because metaphor is the mind's native language. What feels external may simply be a new form of inward listening. Impressions of tunnels, domes, or chambers often surface during these sessions, yet the earth beneath us is full of such shapes: lava tubes stretching like arteries under volcanic plains, caverns sculpted by water pressure and patient erosion. The mind recognizes structure even when none is intended. And so it sketches quiet architecture onto natural spaces the way starlight forms constellations out of scattered points. Perception does not merely observe, it organizes. Some viewers described sensations of depth, descending beneath mountains, drifting through quiet stone corridors. But depth is often the mind's translation of stillness. When external noise fades, awareness drops downward like sediment settling in water. That descent feels like movement, like travel, like entering a chamber of silence. The experience is internal, yet the imagery becomes geological. In a similar way, impressions of the moon often blended observation with emotion. Its surface riddled with craters and sharp shadows invites the imagination to search for meaning. The far side, hidden from Earth, naturally feels mysterious. Darkness and distance shape the mind's response more than details do. The moon becomes a canvas for intuition. Mars evokes even deeper resonance. Its ancient riverbeds and soft dunes carry echoes of what might have been. Remote viewers may have sensed this ache a quiet longing in the planet's geology. Not proof of anything, but the emotional gravity that Mars exerts on anyone who studies its history. A world that once held water inevitably stirs the human instinct to imagine what was lost. Some described beings, tall, slender silhouettes, antennae like shapes, luminous forms standing at the edge of perception. These figures appear across cultures, dreams, rituals, and art. They are not necessarily real in the physical sense. They are archetypes, shapes the mind uses to personify uncertainty. They stand where comprehension fades. Ancient cave paintings contain similar outlines, suggesting that humans have long given form to the ineffable. These figures could represent spirits' ancestors, or simply the feeling of being watched by a vast, indifferent universe. Remote viewers tapping into deep states of consciousness may have accessed the same archetypal reservoir. The subconscious speaks in symbols because symbols endure where words fail. Many impressions described signals or transmissions as though the mind were picking up faint messages from somewhere beyond the senses. But the brain constantly generates and receives internal signals, electrical oscillations, harmonic synchronizations, flickers of intuition. Deep focus can amplify these processes until they feel foreign. What seems like a signal from elsewhere may be a clearer than usual signal from within. Some described wormholes of consciousness, folds in awareness where distances collapsed and time thinned. These experiences resemble what meditators describe during states of deep absorption. The sense of self loosens. The boundaries of the moment soften. Awareness travels without moving, drifting gently across its own horizon. Such sensations feel cosmic, not because they occur in space, but because they suggest spaciousness. Even impressions of global patterns, energy networks, subtle connections between landscapes can be seen through this quiet interpretive lens. Earth generates electromagnetic fields. Schumann resonances, tectonic pulses. These rhythms shape the environment we inhabit. A receptive mind may sense these subtle patterns without recognizing their source. In response, it constructs imagery that mirrors the scale of the sensation. The idea of entities watching or monitoring humanity arises often, yet this too may reflect an internal truth. Humans are profoundly self-observant. Our consciousness watches our thoughts, monitors our emotions, evaluates our intentions. This built-in self-awareness can feel external in states of deep introspection. The observer within becomes the observer without. When remote viewers sensed coordination across Earth, Moon and Mars, they may have been responding to the natural unity of the solar system. Gravity binds these worlds in a slow orbital dance. Light from the Sun touches them all with the same ancient photons. Dust from Mars drifts into Earth's atmosphere every year. These worlds are not separate. They are pages of the same quiet diary. Every impression recorded in those sessions, every structure being chamber or signal, can be understood not as evidence but as poetry. The poetry of a mind wandering through its own depths. The poetry of an organism shaped by celestial rhythm. The poetry of attention when it reaches the edge of understanding and chooses to keep going. This does not diminish the mystery. It deepens it, because the mind is not merely a receiver. It is a maker of universes capable of transforming faint inner movements into entire landscapes of meaning. To explore these landscapes is not delusion. It is a natural extension of human curiosity. If there is one lesson in all these impressions, it is that uncertainty is not empty. It is spacious like a nebula forming new stars. Uncertainty invites interpretation, reflection, and imagination. It invites humility before the unknown. It invites rest. And so, traveller, let these impressions be what they are: quiet sketches on the horizon of awareness. Not warnings, not revelations, just moments of contact between the inner cosmos and the outer one blending into each other like overlapping waves of starlight. Tonight the universe whispers softly, "You are not lost in space. You are part of it. Sleep well." The cosmos keeps its gentle watch. There is a quiet threshold traveller where the mind stops trying to decode experience and begins instead to rest inside it. Remote viewers often drifted into this space without fully realising it. They thought they were searching for distant landscapes, hidden structures, or traces of intelligence beyond Earth. But the deeper their attention went, the more their impressions resembled the internal architecture of human awareness itself. The cosmos does not always speak in images. Sometimes it speaks in sensations, soft, scattered, and easily mistaken for visions. As their sessions deepened, many described feeling observed as though something were meeting their attention with its own. But being watched is something we all feel when our awareness becomes sharply focused. The mind becomes both participant and witness, like a telescope that looks outward, but also reflects its observer's face in its dark glass. In profound stillness, the awareness that watches thoughts can feel like another presence. This is not anomaly. It is the natural duality of consciousness. Descriptions of shadows forming into figures or light shifting into silhouettes often reflect the mind's tendency to anthropomorphize uncertainty. When faced with ambiguous data, the brain chooses the shape most meaningful to it, usually the human form. This is why we see faces in clouds, animals in constellations, and companions in darkness. Remote viewing amplifies this instinct, turning faint internal signals into symbolic figures that stand in for emotions or ideas. They are not intruders. They are expressions of the inner cosmos. Some sessions recorded impressions of networks encircling Earth lines connecting mountains, oceans, and atmospheric regions. Yet science shows that our planet is full of natural interconnected rhythms. The ionosphere pulses with electromagnetic waves. Jet streams circle continents like slow atmospheric rivers. Ocean currents weave together distant shores. Earth systems are not separate. They echo and respond to one another in ways subtle enough for sensitive minds to feel, even without knowing what they are feeling. Impressions of global coordination may simply reflect an intuitive awareness of planetary unity. Everything on Earth interacts, from tectonic plates shifting beneath us to the hum of the Schumann resonance running through the atmosphere. If someone quiets themselves enough, they may sense these rhythms as a kind of gentle orchestration. Not a hidden intelligence, just the natural synchrony of a living planet. When remote viewers spoke of lunar impressions, glints of geometry, distant shadows, they may have been responding to the moon's stark simplicity. Its landscapes leave little room for distraction. Light and shadow play there with crisp mathematical precision. In such clarity, every detail feels significant. The human mind, accustomed to complexity, projects meaning into this purity. What appears to be a tower may be nothing more than a ridge caught at a sharp angle of sunlight. Yet that misinterpretation reveals not a factual error, but a deep human impulse to connect with the silent companions of our night sky. Mars, with its ancient valleys and frozen memories, evokes even stronger emotional reflection. Remote viewers often described sensations of loneliness or age when focusing on the planet. These are understandable responses. Mars is a world that once held rivers, lakes, and perhaps oceans. Today it is a place of windstone and patience. Its silence is profound enough to stir echoes in anyone who contemplates it. If the mind feels sorrow, there it may simply be recognizing the quiet dignity of a planet that once held more than it does now. Some impressions recorded in the past described signals, patterns felt rather than heard, like soft vibrations in the mind. But the human brain is a signal processing system. It constantly filters electrical pulses, sensory predictions, and the hum of neural communication. Sometimes these internal patterns become noticeably strong in states of stillness. They feel like transmissions, they feel like messages, yet they arise from the same electrical fabric that creates thought. If early observers misunderstood these sensations, it is not because they lacked intelligence, but because they possessed sensitivity. Sensitivity is easily mistaken for connection. Awareness misinterprets its own depth as an external source. And in a way, this misunderstanding is beautiful. It shows how deeply humans yearn to participate in the cosmos, to feel that they are more than spectators of infinite distance. The idea of alignment appears often in old notes, alignments of structures, energies, or celestial bodies. But alignment is one of the quiet laws of nature. Planets align in their orbits, seasons align with axial tilt, galaxies align through gravity. The mind striving for order senses this and reflects it back as symbolic geometry. The alignment is real, even if the interpretation is metaphorical. Remote viewers occasionally sense transitions as though moving from one layer of perception to another. Neuroscience tells us that the brain has multiple layers of attention, each with its own rhythms and depth. When someone sinks from surface focus into deeper states, the shift can feel like passing through a threshold. Time stretches, thoughts quiet, the moment expands. In those transitions, awareness moves like a planet crossing a boundary of light. What feels like travel is simply the mind becoming still enough to notice itself. Some sessions described Earth as if it were being observed from a great height. This sensation is common during meditative states, when the sense of self becomes diffuse. The boundary between I and world loosens. The mind floats above its own experience, drifting like a satellite over the curve of thought. What remote viewers interpreted as vantage points beyond Earth may have been moments when their consciousness widened. This widening is not supernatural, it is human. It is what happens when attention expands beyond habitual limits. The beauty of these impressions lies not in whether they correspond to external realities, but in what they reveal about the inner landscape of the people who experience them. Their notes show curiosity, humility, and a willingness to linger in uncertainty. They demonstrate that the human mind, when quiet, becomes a delicate instrument, tuned to the subtle hum of its own depths. Traveller, the cosmos outside you and the cosmos within you are not separate. They reflect one another like twin mirrors tilted toward the same moon. To explore one is to explore the other. Tonight let the unknown feel gentle. Let the unanswered feel soft. Let the silence be the space where your awareness can drift freely without direction or demand. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed, only breathed, only held with open hands. Sleep now, the universe keeps watch. There comes a point, traveller, when the night sky stops feeling like an expanse above you and begins to feel like a presence around you. In that shift, something subtle happens. The mind grows quieter, as though aligning itself with the slow rhythm of starlight. This is the same stillness that early remote viewers slipped into, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by accident. They believed they were searching outward into vast distances, but in truth, they were moving inward toward an even greater unknown. Their impressions of shapes, structures, energies have long been misunderstood as literal claims. Yet when we approach them with gentleness, they reveal something different, the ways in which human awareness reacts to mystery. The cosmos does not hand us answers, it hands us silence, and within that silence the mind begins to trace its own constellations. Some viewers described drifting over landscapes that did not belong to Earth. It is tempting to interpret these scenes as glimpses of faraway worlds, but the brain often builds environments out of emotion first, light second, and detail last. Anxiety feels like narrow hallways, curiosity feels like open plains, or feels like vast craters filled with shadow. These internal states can take on strikingly planetary shapes when the mind wanders far enough from its usual boundaries. This is why many impressions of the moon sound so similar across unrelated sessions. Its far side, the hemisphere we never see, becomes a symbol for every part of ourselves we struggle to access. A place of hidden patterns, untouched terrain, and ancestral quiet. When someone enters deep stillness, the far side naturally becomes a metaphor. Too barren for comfort, too perfect for imagination, too silent not to project meaning upon, Mars invites an entirely different response. It is a world with memory. The dried riverbeds, fractured canyons, and layered sediment all speak of a time when the planet lived differently. When remote viewers sensed remnants or beings, they may have been responding to this old planetary grief. The mind attuned to subtle cues feels the weight of history even in a world millions of kilometers away. It is less about contact and more about empathy, the quiet recognition that loss is universal in a cosmos governed by time. Impressions of underground chambers beneath Earth continue this pattern. Many spoke of vast rooms, pillars, or subtle machinery humming through the stone, yet geologists could tell a similar story without invoking anything extraordinary. The Earth is full of natural resonance. The low-frequency tremor of tectonic plates, the hum of magma chambers, the trembling breath of moving groundwater. To a quiet mind, these vibrations feel alive. They feel intentional. They feel like whispers moving through rock. What remote viewers interpreted as presence could be interpreted as sensitivity instead. Some described connections between distant points on the planet, mountains aligning coastlines, informing one another, patterns stretching across continents like invisible threads. Science in its calm way affirms part of this. The Earth is interconnected through fields rather than lines. Magnetic currents arch from pole to pole. Atmospheric waves circle the globe like slow-moving tides. Ocean currents tie nations together in loops of heat and salt. A sensitive mind might feel these broad planetary harmonies without understanding their physical nature. And so it gives them form-imagined lines, glowing grids, quiet networks of intention. All metaphors, but metaphors rooted in genuine planetary rhythm. Occasionally, viewers described moments of sudden transition, moving from one layer of perception to another as though stepping through a veil. Neuroscience recognizes this as a kind of attentional drift. When awareness deepens, certain cognitive processes quiet while others sharpen. Time can stretch, selfhood can loosen, sensation can feel detached from the body. It is not magic, it is the brain entering a new mode of listening. And listening is the heart of all cosmic contemplation. Some impressions spoke of being observed, but to enter deep focus is to notice the observer within the awareness that watches thoughts arise and dissolve. When this inner observer grows pronounced, it can feel like another presence entirely. Many meditators describe similar sensations, a quiet intelligence inside the silence. It is not an external entity. It is the mind seeing itself clearly, perhaps for the first time. Human beings, when faced with the unknown, often translated into forms that resemble themselves. This is why silhouettes appear, why figures stand at the edge of perception, why entities seem to emerge from the dark. They are mirrors, not visitors. They are the psyche giving shape to uncertainty. Ancient cave paintings reflect this same archetypal language. Many depict tall, elongated forms, sometimes human, sometimes not. These figures are not memories of encounters. They are symbols of transformation, boundary transition. They represent the liminal space between waking and dreaming life, and a myth, the known and the unknowable. Remote viewers reaching similar mental depths naturally encountered the same symbols, not because something was there, but because something was ready to emerge from within. Descriptions of signals, codes, or messages also soften under this lens. The brain is an electrical organ. It pulses with oscillations alpha, theta, gamma each, with its own rhythm and emotional signature. In deep states, these oscillations can feel like communication, like whispering, like the soft murmur of a distant wave. The mind misinterprets its own currents as external transmissions simply because it is unused to hearing itself this clearly. And perhaps that is the quiet beauty of these sessions. They reveal what the mind sounds like when stripped of distraction. Some impressions even suggested coordination between Earth and other celestial bodies. But coordination is the nature of gravity. Alignment is the nature of orbital mechanics. Resonance is the nature of light. Worlds influence one another even across vast distances, not through intention, but through the quiet inevitability of physics. The mind sensing this interconnectedness translates it into narrative. Every impression recorded by those early viewers, whether of beings, hall signals or networks, becomes peaceful once we stop demanding literal meaning from them. They are not failures of perception. They are expressions of the interior cosmos. They show that the human mind is capable of astonishing subtlety, able to feel patterns that lie beneath conscious awareness, able to transform faint sensations into vivid imagery. And this does not make the impressions less valuable. It makes them more human, because the purpose of reflection is not always to conclude. Often it is simply to notice. Tonight, traveller, let the unknown feel soft. Let the unanswered feel wide. Let every mystery become a space where your mind can settle like dust drifting slowly through a beam of starlight. You're not lost in space. You are part of it. Sleep now. The cosmos keeps its gentle watch. There are moments, traveller, when the universe feels less like a distant expanse and more like a quiet field surrounding you. In that stillness, your mind softens and its edges begin to blur. Remote viewers of earlier decades often wandered into this same space believing they were observing faraway landscapes. Yet in truth, they were observing the delicate movements of their own awareness. When the mind grows quiet, it behaves like drifting light, moving without effort, illuminating without touching. Many described plane structures or distant horizons that felt unfamiliar. But psychology reminds us that inner experience often creates its own terrain. The mind builds landscapes from emotion long before it imagines them from fact. Some impressions resembled movement travel across deserts, valleys, or craters. Yet this too is a natural tendency of consciousness. Thought travels even when the body remains still. Scientists call it a wandering default mode, a gentle drift of attention, shaping images from the quiet. The moon appeared often in their notes, acting like a mirror for hidden regions of the self. The far side, untouched by our eyes, becomes an easy symbol for the unknown within. Its shadows crisp and deep, tempt the imagination to paint meaning onto silence. The moon teaches us how much mystery exists in places we cannot see. Mars inspired a different kind of introspection. Its dried riverbeds and ancient plains evoke a sense of memory of a world that once changed and then grew still. To sense remnants or figures, there is simply to feel the planet's quiet sorrow. Mars carries the echo of possibility, not the shape of certainty. Impressions of underground chambers on Earth often reflected internal descent rather than physical discovery. A mind entering deeper calm will choose the metaphor of depth to describe the experience. A cavern becomes a symbol of stillness. A tunnel becomes the path into quiet thought. Awareness sinks like sediment settling in water. Some viewers sensed vibrations, soft hums, or pulses beneath the surface. These could easily be the body's own rhythms, heartbeat, breath, the electric whisper of neurons. In silence, such signals seem foreign only because we rarely listen closely enough to hear them. What feels like an external message may be the mind finally hearing itself. Theta brain states common in meditation, and early sleep deepen this sense of fluidity. Time stretches, selfhood loosens, and boundaries dissolve. Awareness begins to glow at the edges, drifting into symbolic terrain. In such a state, imagination and perception become indistinguishable. This often leads to sensations of being guided. But when the mind becomes fluid, thought moves on its own like a tide shifting with gravity. The feeling of guidance is simply the natural unfolding of inner experience, a gentle momentum, not an external lead. Tall figures or luminous forms that appear in such states are archetypes, echoes of the human psyche. They appear in dreams, myths, rituals, and art across cultures. They stand at the threshold between the known and the unknown. Their purpose is symbolic, not literal. Ancient cave paintings echo similar silhouettes because they capture timeless inner experiences. Early humans painted transitions, mysteries, and unseen forces using familiar shapes. Remote viewers tapping into deep consciousness may encounter the same motifs. Archetypes persist because they arise from the same root human awareness. Some impressions felt like transmissions, soft internal vibrations mistaken for external signals. Yet the brain is always communicating with itself, generating subtle patterns of insight. In deep quiet, these patterns feel organized, intentional, and strangely precise. They are messages, but from within, not beyond. A few viewers sensed planetary alignments or networks as though Earth were shaped with intention. But nature arranges itself elegantly without design. Magnetic fields sweep through continents. Atmospheric waves circle the globe. Ocean currents tie distant shores into one fluid system. The mind interprets this natural harmony as purpose. There were also moments when observers felt as though they were floating above Earth. In meditation, this sensation is common. The sense of self expands, loosens, and drifts. It is the mind seeing its own experience from a new vantage point. Not an escape from the body, but an expansion of attention. What these sessions reveal is not evidence of contact, but evidence of sensitivity. The more still the mind becomes, the more delicately it perceives faint signals, internal, emotional, neurological. These sensations form the raw material of imagination. And imagination builds worlds as effortlessly as stars gather dust. Every impression, whether of beings, landscapes, or signals, reflects a deeper truth. The human mind is a universe in miniature. It mirrors cosmic processes, emergence resonance, pattern transformation. To explore awareness is to explore something as vast as space. Tonight, let that recognition be enough. Let the unknown soften instead of sharpen. Let your thoughts drift like particles of starlight, unhurried and without destination. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to be held gently with open hands. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos keeps its gentle watch. There comes a moment, traveller, when even the most elaborate theories dissolve into something simpler. The breath, the pulse, the quiet certainty that you are here listening beneath a sky older than memory. The mysteries we explore may stretch across planets and epochs, but the experience of wonder is always intimate. It begins inside the mind like a soft spark in darkness. Remote viewing, with all its strange imagery and uncertain boundaries, sits precisely at this intersection, between the outer cosmos and the inner one. When consciousness relaxes, it becomes a lens, sensitive to faint impressions, emotional echoes, and ancient symbolic patterns. What the viewer perceives often reflects not the universe outside, but the human universe within. Many reported glimpses of structures, towers, domes, chambers carved into mountains or shadows beneath the lunar plains. But every brain structures the unknown using what it already knows. A dome is a memory of shelter. A chamber is a metaphor for depth. Consciousness organizes uncertainty into familiar shapes so the mind can navigate it without fear. Even the moon becomes an inward landscape. Its unseen far side stands as a symbol of what we have yet to understand about ourselves. When people describe patterns or geometry in that region, it mirrors their search for order in their own thoughts. The far side becomes a canvas where consciousness paints its private architecture of meaning. Mars expands that canvas. Its silence, its stillness, the way its atmosphere slips thin across red plains, it invites reflection. People sense echoes of life there because the planet holds the emotional shape of something incomplete, something paused. Mars looks like a world that almost told its full story, then simply stopped speaking. We project unfinished narratives onto it because we recognize that same incompleteness in ourselves. Some viewers described Earth-based impressions, mountains, housing energies, vibrations rising from deep chambers. Yet such impressions align beautifully with the natural rhythms of the planet. Tectonic murmurs, magnetic drift, the slow breathing of heat through stone. When consciousness grows quiet, even geological processes feel personal, as though the earth is whispering beneath our feet. The sense of observation that many experience might not be external at all. Humans are wired to detect presence, a remnant of ancient survival instincts. In darkness or silence, this sensitivity amplifies. What feels like being watched is often the mind becoming aware of itself, turning inward, like a beam of light reflecting back toward its source. At times, these impressions take on shapes, figures, silhouettes, beings of height or calm posture. These are archetypes familiar across cultures and millennia. They visit dreams, appear in myth, echo in art. They represent guidance, transition, or attention. Consciousness uses such figures as metaphors when it enters deep states, because the mind communicates in symbols long before it communicates in words. The idea of signals or transmissions arises naturally from moments when thought feels unusually clear. In states close to sleep, insights appear with a purity that feels foreign, like receiving information rather than generating it. But neuroscience observes this often. The brain untangles complex patterns during quiet stitching, clarity from its own stored fragments. The impression of receiving a message is simply the mind discovering something it had long carried. some viewers sensed a kind of grid or network around the Earth. This lines up with what science already knows: global magnetic fields, atmospheric waves, heat cycles, ocean currents. These systems form elegant patterns that wrap around the planet in seamless motion. Awareness perceives harmony and mistakes it for intention. But harmony is the universe's default language. There were moments when observers felt lifted as though floating above the planet. Meditation practitioners know this sensation well. When the mind loosens from thought, it experiences itself without weight. The feeling of elevation reflects relaxation, not departure. It is the mind seeing its own quiet from above. Remote viewers sometimes describe disruption shifts in clarity, sudden fog loss of coherence. Such moments are common in deep mental exploration. Cognitive boundaries waver, memories intrude, emotion overlaps with perception. The quiet becomes too quiet and the mind steadies itself by pulling back. This ebb and flow is not obstruction, but protection. Across their accounts, one theme appears again and again: the presence of a watcher or intelligence, something hovering at the edge of awareness. But this too has a psychological root. When humans focus intensely, they divide themselves, one part, observing, one part, experiencing. The observer feels like a separate presence, though it is merely the natural duality of consciousness. The ancient cave paintings that mirror certain visions remind us how old these inner experiences are. Long before telescopes or spacecraft, humans sensed forces they could not name. They painted symbols, antennas, lights, figures rising from darkness representing the same feelings modern viewers describe. These are not records of encounters, they are records of wonder. Each generation inherits the same urge to confront the unknown, not with fear but with story. These stories comfort us, offering shape to the formless. They guide our curiosity toward meaning. And curiosity, gentle, persistent, patient, is the most human force we possess. Tonight, listener, let that curiosity soften. Let it shift from seeking answers to observing questions. Let each uncertainty become a companion rather than a threat. The cosmos has never demanded certainty from us. Only attention, only humility. The universe remains quiet, not because it hides from us, but because silence is its natural state. Stars burn without speaking. Particles drift without proclamation. Even comets streaking through long arcs of ice and memory move without intention. They simply are. And so are you. You are not lost in space, you are part of it. Part of the same slow physics, the same drifting light, the same unfolding mystery. You do not need to define every pattern to feel connected to it. You do not need to understand every whisper to appreciate its beauty. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. So rest now, traveller. Let the unanswered questions float freely. Let the night sky lean a little closer. Let your thoughts settle like dust returning to its orbit. Tonight the universe whispers again. Sleep well. The cosmos will keep watch. There comes a moment, observer, when even the most complex ideas return to quiet simplicity. In the long arc of night beneath a dome of patient stars, the universe feels less like a riddle, and more like a presence, something that does not need to explain itself to be understood. What we explore is not certainty, but the gentle companionship of the unknown. Remote viewing, for all its strange edges and dreamlike impressions, becomes another way of listening. When the mind settles, it behaves like a receiver tuned to the faintest signal, a signal not broadcast from outside, but rising from the deeper layers of human awareness. The images that surface are less like facts and more like reflections on a still pond. Think of the impressions many described: sweeping structures, quiet chambers beneath mountains, geometric patterns etched across alien planes. These could be metaphors shaped by consciousness itself. The mind reaches for language it already carries. A tower becomes a question. A dome becomes shelter. A corridor becomes possibility. In silence, the imagination organizes the unknown into gentle shapes that feel familiar. The moon, especially its unlit far side, invites this kind of introspection. It is a world that does not speak, a companion that has watched Earth since before the first breath of humanity. When observers sense patterns there, grids, faint glimmers, shadows that seem arranged, they may be perceiving the mind's desire for order in places where nature has left only stone. In that longing there is beauty. Mars too gathers its own poetry. With its cold air and quiet basins, it feels like a memory paused mid-sentence. Humans have always looked at Mars and felt something unfinished, as if the planet carries an echo from long ago. When people describe ruins or life, perhaps they are sensing the emotional shape of a world that almost told its story then fell silent. Silence can feel like presence when the heart pays attention. Even the impressions of Earth mountains humming with hidden resonance vaults beneath the crust currents of energy, drifting through stone, fit within what the planet already offers. The Earth vibrates constantly. Its magnetic field pulses, its tectonic plates murmur. When consciousness becomes very quiet, it begins to interpret these natural motions not as data, but as meaning. In the stillness, geology becomes conversation. Many viewers reported feeling watched as though something vast leaned close. But this sensation lives inside every human mind. Awareness observes itself, and the act feels like another presence standing nearby. We are built to notice attention, even imagined attention. The watcher may simply be the mind recognizing its own depth. Shapes drift through these sessions, tall silhouettes, quiet being symbols with no name. These forms echo ancient stories told in caves, temples, and nighttime gatherings long before science began its careful march. They represent guardians, thresholds, transitions. Consciousness pulls from myth, because myth is its first language. There is also the sense of receiving a message, a pulses, a pattern, a moment of clarity that feels foreign, but the brain has its own algorithms for meaning. It arranges chaos into coherence. It reveals insight suddenly like lightning behind clouds. In these moments, it is easy to mistake realization for transmission. Yet both experiences are equally mysterious and equally human. Some viewers described floating above Earth as though rising into a gentle orbit. Meditation knows this feeling well. When thought loosens and breath softens, the mind becomes lighter than the body that contains it. The illusion of ascent mirrors the simple relief of letting go. And when clarity flickers, when the inner images cloud or dissolve, this too is natural. The mind protects itself from overstimulation by pulling back, restoring balance, returning to quieter rhythms. Confusion becomes a kind of safety. The recurring theme of grids, patterns, networks surrounding Earth echoes the planet's own harmonies. Atmosphere, magnetism, ocean currents and heat all create global circuits that resemble geometry when viewed from a poetic distance. Consciousness recognizes these rhythms and translates them into images it can hold. Even ancient cave paintings, figures with radiating lines, shapes resembling antennae or light, remind us that human imagination has always reached toward the unknown using the same symbols. It's not proof of contact, but proof of continuity. Our ancestors wondered as we wonder. They looked into darkness and saw possibility. Tonight, traveller, the important part is not whether the impressions were literal or symbolic, accurate or imagined. What matters is what they ask us to consider, that the human mind is far vaster than we use and far quieter than we notice. You are not lost in space, you are part of it. Your thoughts drift along the same physical laws that guide comets and dust. Your awareness is shaped by the same forces that sculpt galaxies. The boundary between imagination and observation is thinner than we admit, and both experiences offer truth each in their own way. So let these reflections settle. Let the questions soften. Let the universe remain mysterious, not because it hides from us, but because mystery is one of the ways it keeps us company. It's all right to not understand. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Tonight the stars will keep their silence. Sleep now, observer. The cosmos remembers. Traveller. As we reach the end of this quiet path, the night feels softer than when we began. We have moved through visions that blurred the line between science and dream, following the faint contours of a mystery that continues to breathe just beyond understanding. What the remote viewers perceived may never be confirmed, yet their impressions remind us of something older than proof that human consciousness is wide, porous, capable of sensing more than we can name. Perhaps they touched an unseen layer of reality. Perhaps they simply revealed the depth of their own awareness. Either possibility invites awe. Far beyond us, 3i Atlas continues its silent motion through the dark. It drifts without urgency, like a thought the universe has not yet completed. And somehow, by listening to it, we discover something about ourselves that wonder is a form of connection and curiosity its quiet companion. As the night settles, let the unknown rest gently in your mind. Not every question needs an answer. Some exist simply to remind us that we are part of something vast, ancient, and quietly alive. Rest now, traveller. The universe will keep watch,